lock in The Freedom of Becoming a Loser by the Minds Paradox YouTube channel. 30 minutes, lock in. Let's have some interesting discussions and watch an interesting video.
In 1915, Franz Kafka published a story that would become one of the most famous in modern literature. A man named Gregor Samsa wakes up one morning transformed into a giant insect. But the horror of the story is not the transformation. The horror is what Gregor thinks about first, his job. What has happened to me, he thinks. And then, immediately, in the very
honestly, in today's society, you wake up as a giant insect, the first thing you're thinking of is, holy shit, how's rent gonna get paid? Where the fuck am I gonna live? In today's society, that really do be how it be. And Kafka lived in the fucking 20s. So if it was like that back, if it was like that back then chat, we're cooked. We're cooked.
What an exhausting profession I have chosen. Traveling day in and day out. If I did not hold back for my parents' sake, I would have quit long ago. He has become a monstrous vermin. His body is no longer human. And his first anxiety, his deepest reflex, is that he will be late for work. This is not fantasy. This is not absurdism for its own sake. This is diagnosis. The metamorphosis is not the story of a man who becomes an insect. It is the story of a man who realizes he was already an insect, who wakes up for one terrible morning to the truth of what his life had become.
This is true. And it's honestly really sad. Everything he's saying is holding a lot of weight. Because it's by design, right? The systems are kind of set up to keep us in this place where, we wake up, we do the same thing, we're productive, we're useful, we go to the office and we make money for the upper class, for the bourgeoisie. Equating that to becoming a monstrous vermin in 1920, I think it holds even truer today, I feel, because that is kind of genuinely what you become. When you get out of work some days, or when you get up for work some days, some of those days genuinely feel like your body is made out of lead. Your body has changed into a different material that you just cannot force to do. And I think these types of things can lead to depression. And we see many working people soulless and in life-sucking jobs that they are not fulfilled in. And many people just go their whole lives just not being fulfilled at all.
I had transformed into something I did not recognize. Something that looked like me, but was hollow inside. I had won the race. I had achieved the goals. I had done everything the world told me to do. And my prize was an empty room. For years, I had been a high-functioning addict. My drug of choice was achievement. My entire identity, my entire sense of worth.
I'm glad he said that. I'm glad he said that, because people don't realize that you can be addicted to more things than just drugs. You can be addicted to work. You could be a workaholic, bro. You could be addicted to going to the gym. You could be addicted to food. You could be addicted to being an asshole. I think people don't realize that if you get too into too much into a one-track mind, that you will set yourself off for destroying pretty much everything in your life. Life requires, it does not ask of you, it requires moderation. It requires you to moderate. You cannot go all in on everything all the time. It won't work. Things will fail. You have to moderate and pick and choose what's going to have priority. I think overachieving is certainly it's definitely a thing that happens and that people do. And many people don't see that even as a bad thing. We see it as, oh, they're just really disciplined. Oh, that person's a really hard worker. They have a great work ethic. But we don't see behind in their brain is that they are probably suffering in other areas of their life and making up for it in this particular aspect of it.
My free time was not for rest. It was for optimization. My hobbies were not for joy. They were side hustles waiting to be monetized. I listened to podcasts at double speed, not to learn, but to consume more efficiently. I felt a spike of genuine, almost physical guilt on any day I did not produce something tangible.
I find myself thinking like this all the time. And I feel like a lot of creative types do feel like they find themselves thinking like this all the time. Because when you're a creative type like this, I feel like what he's saying right now resonates deeply within me, because I feel like if I'm not doing something, if I have a lazy day, I'm depressed. I feel like fucking shit. I feel like the scum of the earth. That's not to say that, oh, you should just be, you deserve to be lazy and not do shit all the fucking time, but you definitely deserve rest days. People deserve to have rest. Your mind's a muscle and you have to keep working that muscle. And so it's also important on the contrary to give it rest. You work out, you have rest days. You don't go to the gym every single day. I know I don't. It's very easy to let your lack of productivity within your day-to-day start correlating to depressive traits you start to have. I think when people are more complacent, and I kind of talked about this yesterday when I watched the weed video, I think when people become more complacent, that allows your mind to drift into anxious thoughts that fuel depression and that hinder you from being able to take action, because your anxiety is so paralyzing from your complacency.
I optimized my meals for efficiency. I turned meditation into a productivity hack. Even my rest was a resource to be leveraged for better output. I had become the perfect, idealized, useful machine. And I was profoundly, thoroughly broken. The burnout did not come as a dramatic collapse. It came as a slow graying of everything. Just more striving, just more useful days stacked on top of each other until they stopped. In Kafka's novel, The Trial, a man named Joseph K. is arrested one morning. He is never told his crime. He spends the entire book trying to defend himself in a court system he cannot understand, before judges he cannot see, against charges that are never explained. Joseph K. is not guilty of anything specific. That is the point. He is guilty of existing. He is on trial for being alive in a system that demands constant justification. This is not absurdism. This is a precise description of modern life.
I think this is very useful for anyone who is struggling with how they're perceived in the world. I think this is useful for anyone who is struggling with how they're perceived in the world, because yes, when we wake up, we're automatically putting on a performance, of some type, putting on a performance and making a defense for the reasons why we deserve to feel happy that day. Clean, you didn't wash the dishes that day, feel like shit. You feel like shit because you sat on the couch instead of washing the dishes, and now you feel like you have to defend yourself in your own mind for why you're still a good person because you didn't wash the dishes. I think that speaks volumes. I think that speaks volumes to people who are really, really struggling with being perceived in depression, specifically, because I think when people are in depression, they are more likely to kind of forgo some of these things, that a lot of people just consider basic. And you wake up as a depressed person trying to be like, well, I know yesterday I didn't brush my teeth or clean anything, or I didn't go to work and I didn't really talk to anybody. You're immediately out the gate. You're already judging yourself from the day before.
What is your value? What is your use? And the verdict is always the same. Not enough. Try harder. Do more. Joseph K. dies at the end of the novel. He is executed in a quarry, like a dog, still not knowing his crime, still trying to understand. Most people live the same way.
And I think this also speaks to a lot of depression logic is not logical. It's not logical at all. You talk to someone who's depressed and you ask them these questions about themselves. And, you ask me like, oh, well, what's the matter? It's like, oh, I just feel like everybody hates me. It feels like every time I interact with someone, they just hate me and the interaction never goes well. And you're like, well, I mean, is that actually true though? Like, if you go and ask the other person they interact with, they would probably just be like, no, it was a fine conversation. It's that overthinking and over ruminating that kind of ruins it. But also it's you're fighting demons that aren't there, you know? You're fighting demons that aren't there. You're kind of placing these assumptions of thoughts that other people are you think are having, but you don't really know. You don't really know, and you don't get to know, right? No one has the right to access anybody's thoughts, right? That's one thing that we all get privacy to. We all have privacy to our thoughts. We all are owed privacy to our thoughts, and because of that, you should never worry about what other people are thinking. Because it's not your business what other people are thinking. It's not your business. It's they have a right to privacy of their own mind, just like you do. So don't even worry about it. Why are you thinking about it? And that sounds logical, but also on the other side, to a depressed person, seeing logic is very, very difficult. Is very, very difficult. Depression does not respond to philosophy. Depression responds to behaviors. You can't philosophy yourself out of depression. Ultimately, you have to change based on the philosophy.
Kafka knew this trial because he lived it. By day, he worked at the Workers' Accident Insurance Institute in Prague. 8 hours of paperwork, 8 hours of usefulness, claims to process, forms to fill, a respectable position in a respectable institution, a steady salary, everything a young man from a middle-class Jewish family was supposed to want. By night, he wrote. He wrote in the hours he should have been sleeping. He wrote until 2, 3, 4 in the morning, knowing he would have to wake at 7 for the office. He destroyed his health. He developed the tuberculosis that would eventually kill him. He produced work that no one wanted to publish, that his friends politely discouraged, that his own father dismissed as a waste of time. Franz Kafka never married, never had children, never achieved financial independence, never saw his novels published. By every metric the world uses to measure a life, he was a failure.
And yet we know him. What's so, if you look up, a lot of philosophers were really poor. A lot of philosophers were not famous when they were alive. A lot of philosophers are famous because they were discovered after they were dead, and all the philosophies were discovered later by intellectuals who wanted to preserve their writings and their thoughts and ideas. Philosophers, are famously, really, just not fucking. People don't like them because they ask questions, bro. That's like a philosopher's whole thing. And then when you're in power and you're trying to control people, you do not want people to ask questions. So when people start asking questions, you either make them poor or you just fucking kill them. Or you put them in jail,
He died of tuberculosis at 40, unable to eat because the disease had spread to his larynx. He left instructions for his friend, Max Brod. Burn everything. Destroy all my manuscripts. My work has no value. It should not survive me. Brod disobeyed. And now, a century later, Kafka's useless midnight scribbling is read in every language on earth. His insurance reports are dust. His respectable career is forgotten. The files he processed, the claims he approved, the useful work that consumed his daylight hours, all of it has vanished without trace. The useful Kafka disappeared. The useless one remains. 2,000 years before Kafka, on the other side of the world, a Chinese philosopher named Zhuangzi told a story. A carpenter and his apprentice are walking through a forest. They come upon an oak tree of extraordinary size. Its trunk is massive, wider than 10 men could embrace. Its branches could shelter 1,000 people. It is ancient and vast and magnificent. The apprentice, trained to see the world in terms of utility, is immediately struck by its potential. He sees lumber, ships, houses, furniture, a fortune in timber. "Master," he says, "this is the finest tree I have ever seen. We must use it." The carpenter barely glances at it. He tells his apprentice to keep walking. "This," he says, "is a worthless tree, a trash tree. Its wood is gnarled and twisted. The grain is warped and knotted. You cannot make boats from it. They would sink. You cannot make houses. They would crumble. You cannot make furniture. It would fall apart. This tree is useless. That is why it is still standing. That night, the tree appears to the carpenter in a dream. You compare me, the tree says, to your useful trees. The pear tree with its sweet fruit, the orange tree with its harvest, the straight oak with its strong timber. But what is their fate? Because the pear tree bears fruit, people break its branches. Because the orange tree is useful, people strip it bare. Because the straight oak is valuable, the axe comes for it young.
That is true. I mean, think about it. Who are we being useful for? Who are we being used? Whenever we have, as working class proletariat citizens, who do we have? Who are we benefiting whenever we go to work? No, whenever we are useful and we have a lot of utility. When a person has a lot of utility, they are not normally getting back what they're putting in to it, you know? And that kind of goes to what Franz Kafka is kind of getting at here, where the more useful you are, the quicker you're discarded, right? He was talking about trees. Trees are very useful. They cut them down. Oak trees live short life. You know, orange trees are fucking stripped bare and eaten. Pear trees, same shit. So, I mean, the more useful you are, the quicker you're going to be discarded from the world. And I think to also take that kind of same mentality and apply it to capitalism and people in, you know, in the business place and things of that nature. The more useful you are, you're not getting what you're putting into it. You're going to be discarded the moment you get sick and you have to leave, you know? You get pregnant, you're not getting paid, you know? These people the value that you are putting in is just not being received. So you're being essentially discarded. You're being discarded either on a emotional level, or you're just quite literally being gotten replaced.
The world looked at me, found no use for me, and left me in peace. The useful trees die young beneath the axe. I will live out my days. Tell me, carpenter, is it better to be useful, or is it better to be free? The useful Kafka, the insurance clerk who processed claims and filed reports and performed his function in the machine, that Kafka is gone. No one reads his paperwork. No one studies his files. His usefulness has been utterly forgotten. But the useless Kafka, the one who stayed up too late writing stories no one asked for, that Kafka is immortal. This is the paradox that Zhuangzi understood and Kafka embodied. The Taoists have a concept that our modern, striving minds find almost impossible to grasp: Wu Wei. It is usually translated as non-action or non-doing, but this translation is wrong, and the misunderstanding matters. Wu Wei does not mean doing nothing. It does not mean laziness or passivity or giving up. It means acting without forcing. He rows frantically upstream. He imposes his will on the world. He forces outcomes through sheer effort. He believes that more struggle always equals more result, that grinding harder is the answer to every problem. And he is exhausted precisely because this is a war he can never win. The river does not stop. Reality does not yield to will. The harder he rows, the faster he burns out. Wu Wei.
I do agree. I think a lot of us think that we can just willpower our way through anything. And myself included, I want to believe I could just, through sheer effort and force, I can just fucking get through it. I can just fucking get through shit. And it's not always like that. I mean, the saying is work smarter, not harder, for a reason. You're not supposed to make shit difficult for yourself. Sometimes things are just difficult, right? You know, there's another saying that, you know, anything that's worth fighting for, or anything that's hard is worth fighting for. And I think that's sometimes true. I don't think it's holistically true. I think definitely we try as humans, I think we perceive the solution to achieving a grandiose goal is by putting out an enormous, inhuman amount of just sheer willpower and effort to get it done, really trying to push the bounds of what we're capable of. That approach a lot of the times either just straight up doesn't work, or worse, leads you into an even worse state of mind from the failure. I think the goal should be to try to engineer a path of the least resistance, rather than just being like, all right, well, I see a mile of fucking just uphill rocky road and it's slippery as fuck, and yeah, let's fucking do this shit. Maybe try to find a different path, buddy.
It is not passivity. It is a different kind of action. Action aligned with the current instead of against it. Effort that flows instead of fights. The Taoists observed water, soft, yielding. It does not fight the rock. It does not try to smash through by force. It goes around, and given enough time, it wears the rock away entirely. The soft overcomes the hard. The yielding overcomes the rigid, not through force, but through persistence. Consider how you learn to ride a bicycle. At first, you gripped the handlebars with white knuckles. You tensed every muscle. You tried to force balance through sheer effort and concentration. And you fell. Again and again, you fell. Then, at some point, you stopped trying so hard. You relaxed your grip. You let the bicycle move beneath you. And suddenly, effortlessly, you could ride. That moment of letting go, that moment when trying less achieved more, that is Wu Wei. Kafka practiced a kind of Wu Wei without knowing it. He did not force his writing to be successful. He did not optimize for the market. He did not brand himself or network or build a platform. He simply wrote what came to him in the only hours he had and let it be what it was. Useless, unprofitable, true.
I think this is also useful philosophy for anyone who wants to be content creators too. I think, myself included, again, as a content creator, I feel like I try to chase examples of what my content needs to be rather than what my content wants to be. I look at what I was doing when I was first started streaming, and I was doing a lot of like gaming challenge stuff, speed run adjacent style content, and that's just not me. I'm not built for that kind of content. I don't enjoy it. I wasn't having fun. I was over here running Pokemon Emerald Randomizer, and like, yeah, it was neat, I guess, but like, I just wasn't really enjoying it that much. It wasn't fulfilling. I feel much more fulfilled sitting here doing this, watching this YouTube video right now than doing that. And that's kind of why I kind of pivoted to this. I was like, well, actually, I don't want to make speedrunning and like super high like pro gaming content. That's not me. I'm not a pro gamer, and I've never enjoyed being a pro gamer. I enjoy playing games, but like, I don't enjoy playing it to that level. I've never have. There's this mold of like what we think our art needs to be, and I think if we just let go of that and take a step back to breathe, I think our art will shine through a lot more. And will be a lot more authentic. What I hate more than anything is inauthenticity. You coming across where you just being the most ingenuine person, major turnoff. Be authentic.
But I will not lie to you. There is a cost to this. The useless tree survives. It lives its long, magnificent life. But it lives alone. No one gathers beneath its branches to harvest fruit. No carpenter praises its form. No one builds monuments from its wood. It stands in the forest, gnarled and ignored, while the useful trees are felled with honor, their timber praised, their sacrifice celebrated. Kafka died unknown. He died asking for his work to be burned. He never knew that anyone would read him. He never received the validation that his useful, respectable insurance career was supposed to provide. The loser, the one who refuses the game of achievement, is not rewarded by the world. The world does not understand. The world does not applaud. The world looks at you with your unmonetized hobbies, your unoptimized hours, your stubborn refusal to perform, and it calls you lazy, aimless, a failure. I am not telling you to quit your job and become a hermit. That is not what the parable means. That would just be another achievement, another optimization, another way of being the best at something, even if that something is renunciation. Most of us cannot escape the system. We have bills, families, obligations. We wake up every morning and go to the office, just as Kafka did. The practice is not to flee the world. It is to build a forest inside yourself that the world cannot touch. This means protecting space in your life that is sacred because it is useless. A hobby you will never monetize. An hour you will never optimize. Kafka's useless space was the hours between midnight and dawn. That was his forest. That was where the gnarled tree grew. The moment the voice whispers, you could turn this into something. You could be better at this. You could make this useful. Recognize that voice. That is the carpenter eyeing your branches. That is the axe being sharpened.
I think having a space in your life or having things in your life that you do for no reason, almost, especially like if you're in adulthood and you have bills and shit to do, or you're in college and you have college classes you need to take care of, having things in your life that you do for absolutely no reason other than the fact that you just want to do it is far and few in between, it seems these days. Especially like if you look in the streaming space or content creation space, almost everything is monetized. Streamers monetize every aspect of their life, you know? IRL streamers, they take the camera with them. They're cameras inside, cameras outside, cameras at the restaurant, the club. You're monetizing every single aspect of their life, you know? And so I think many of us, even outside of the streaming space, forget that it's important to have things that you do that you don't have an ultimate end goal in mind with, where you're not just like, well, yeah, I'm going to get really good at this so I can monetize this and I can blah, 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 blah. The goal, you need goals in your life that exist just to exist. That's the type of selfishness that needs to be had, you know, a type of selfishness that, you know, many people don't even see that selfish can have a positive connotation. They only see that selfishness is a bad thing, but selfishness needs to be practiced in moderation. It is not an all or nothing thing. Selfishness needs to thrive in some scenarios, and other scenarios absolutely not. It's better to be considerate and thinking of others of others' feelings and opinions, but in other scenarios, selfishness certainly needs to be had in order to preserve your own sanity.
In a world that demands every action have a purpose beyond itself, this is the gnarled tree growing wild in the direction the sun pulls it, refusing to straighten for the carpenter. Gregor Samsa, transformed into an insect, eventually stops trying to be useful. In the final part of the metamorphosis, he has been hidden away in his room. His family has stopped feeding him. He has become a burden, an embarrassment, a problem. The traveling salesman who supported everyone has become the vermin they wish would disappear. And something shifts in him. He stops struggling. He stops trying to communicate. He stops trying to prove he is still Gregor, still human, still useful. He listens to his sister play the violin through the door. He experiences, perhaps for the first time, something like peace. He dies that night. His family is relieved. But there is something in that final scene, something Kafka seems to be showing us. Gregor, in his uselessness, in his complete abandonment of the struggle to be valuable, finds a kind of freedom he never had as the dutiful, productive son. The insect body that horrified him becomes, in the end, a liberation from the role he never wanted. It is a dark ending. Kafka does not promise us resurrection or reward. The useless one dies alone and is swept up with the garbage, but he dies free. And that, Kafka seems to say, might be worth something. It asks, from our first breath, what we will become. what we will produce, what we will be good for. It processes us through schools that rank us, jobs that rate us, systems that reduce us to our function. It teaches us
I mean,
to
that's
see ourselves through the carpenter's eyes.
That's essentially what school is, right? I mean, let's all be honest about school for a second. I mean, that's essentially what school is. Not that school isn't good and that, children don't need to learn. Absolutely, children need to learn. But let's not pretend that, like, school isn't basically just a training and breeding grounds to make little capitalists, right? Little good workers, to get in the fucking offices and do what the fuck they're supposed to be, what they're told, It's to teach you to, they on a level teach you to conform and how to behave, and how to follow directions in a strict type of way. So that's essentially what school is. I mean, let's all be honest about what school is. They turn you into little fucking office workers. A lot, and that's what a lot of people, the majority of fucking people, they go to work in regular ass jobs. They're not in like creative roles or in like other like more freeing type style of work. That's what school is. I mean, schools get ranked, from a young age. I mean, we're already, before we're ever even in the work field, we're already being ranked, depending on where schools we're in. Some schools have higher, they get more funding. Some schools get lower funding. And even within your own school, you're ranked against all of your peers. You have that to worry about. You don't want to be the bottom of your class, I mean, unless you don't just fucking care. But I mean, and if you don't, fair enough. You are always, from such a young age, instilled that you have shit to worry about all the time. And constantly you need to prove that you're worth being alive and you're worth getting fed and that you have a use for this world,
That is the frame the system wants you to use. The choice is between two kinds of life. One that belongs to the system and one that belongs to you. One life spent straightening yourself for the carpenter. One life spent growing gnarled and wild and free. The world will call you a loser if you choose the second. Your family will worry. Your peers will judge. The voice inside you, trained for decades in the religion of usefulness, will scream that you are wasting your potential. The carpenter will pass you by, and you will live. Not the venerated life of the decorated corpse, wrapped in silk, honored and dead. The muddy life, the midnight life, the life that drags its tail through days that belong to no one but you. That is the virtue of being useless. Not laziness, not failure, not giving up. Freedom. The freedom that Gregor Samsa found only in death. The freedom that Kafka found in his midnight hours. Coughing blood, writing sentences that no one wanted. The freedom that Zhuangzi found by the river, watching his line drift in the current. The axe is coming for the useful trees. It always does. Become gnarled, become useless, become free.